All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. It's another live episode of Building Character. I am your host, Rick, here at the Game Trade Media Studio in Timonium, Maryland, with a very special guest, Mr. Paul Alexander Butler.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
You doing great?
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Right?
I'm doing great. I'm caffeinated, so...
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because we need that, because we're about to do a character build for the game, The One Ring, the role-playing game, The One Ring by Cubicle 7, which you are deeply involved in.
I don't know if I'm deeply involved. I'm a marketing assistant for Cubicle 7 in addition to my other duties. Yeah. I'm deeply involved in a 5-year campaign that we've been playing at home.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
So this has been around for...
It's about 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, as far as building character goes, the community, you guys watching this show, are going to help us build these characters. We're actually going to build 2 today. And we're focusing on the One Ring, so the races that are available there.
So the core role-playing game, which is the default setting, is about 5 years after the death of Smaug. Spoiler alert: the dragon dies at the end of The Hobbit. So it's an era of kind of renewed hope, where everybody remembers the Battle of 5 Armies that just happened, and the elves and the dwarves and the humans were working together for the first time in an age. So there's this sense of hope, and the orcs and goblins have retreated, and things are going to go well.
Well, we hope, right?
Well, that's what the characters think, but we as players know what happens in about 60 years. So
right.
We're just going to file that away.
Okay.
So for now, though, things look good.
Things look good, and it's all about adventure.
Absolutely.
All right. So, what are the core races we can?
So we actually call them cultures because there are multiple races of man, right? Multiple human races.
Okay.
So there are 6 options. So the human races are the human cultures are bardings. Right, so if you remember Bard, of course, the one who killed Smaug at the end of the Hobbit, Bard is now king. Bard is now king of the city of Dale. If you remember that the ruins of Dale were at the foot of Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, and with the help of the dwarves, they have begun to rebuild the city of Dale.
Right.
Bard is now king, and the Bardings are the folks that serve Bard in Dale. So some of them, may have come from Lake Town. Some of them may have come from the surrounding Dale lands. So you've got folks that serve Bard.
Okay.
Then we have the Woodmen of Wilderland, the Woodmen of Mirkwood. So those folks are sort of passingly mentioned in the texts of the novels.
Okay.
But those are more of a martial sort of rural community on the western eaves of Mirkwood, and they survive through hunting and some herding of sheep and forest pigs and whatnot.
Nice.
And then we have the Bjornings. Now, if you remember Bjorn, of course, is the shapeshifter, the fellow that can turn into a giant bear. Now, the Bjornings can't turn into bears necessarily, but after the events of The Hobbit, Bjorn sort of removed himself from his self-imposed exile and became a chieftain of men.
Okay.
Men, of course, in the broadest sense that Tolkien uses it, including
Sure.
women. And folks from all around the vales of the Anduin River have gone to serve Bjorn to protect the Anduin River and the crossings there from orcs or wargs or other troubles.
Nice.
So, and those are folks from disparate backgrounds that have sort of gathered around the chieftain of Bjorn.
Okay.
So those are our three human options.
Okay.
The 3 non-human options are elves of Mirkwood. Right, so we all remember the Mirkwood elves.
Yeah.
Now these are not the elves of Lord of the Rings from Rivendell or from Lothlorien.
Right.
These are the folk of Legolas and King Thranduil.
Okay.
So they're a little scrappier, if you will. Then we've got the dwarves of Erebor. So the kingdom of Erebor has been rebuilt after Smaug was removed, and King Dane Ironfoot has come from the Iron Hills to the east. And is the new king under the mountain, and that civilization has also been rebuilt.
Nice.
And then finally, of course, what would a Lord of the Rings game be without hobbits? So we have hobbits of the Shire. Now, are hobbits from the area of Wilderland? No, but we kind of need to include them because hobbits. And of course, now that Bilbo has returned back home, there are tales of mountains and all sorts of other things. And if you've got a little bit of Tookish blood in you, then maybe you just want to hit the road and see what all that nonsense was about.
So, all right. So
those are options.
All right. So those are options. So those of you that are watching, let's find out which one we should build. We have 2 builds we're going to do. So we can have 2 different characters from different races or different cultures. So help us out. Tell us what you guys think would be a good one for each of us.
And we should be buddies. I think we're gonna I think
Right.
it's important that we're creating a little 2-person fellowship here.
Perfect. So we're gonna go with a culture. So if you guys watching, please let us know what cultures we should ending up. Okay, so we have Mirkwood Elf. That's from Hunter. Hunter, thanks for joining us. Also, Marlena, thanks for watching. I wore orange today.
Is that important?
It is. Some people said they like orange, and also the Orioles opening game is on Monday.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not I don't know if I want to say I'm not a sports ball person, but because my boss.
I like going to baseball games.
I like going to sports and eating and stuff,
Sure.
but it's just not my. I can't watch it on TV.
No.
It's not my thing.
No.
All right, so we have an amazing system. We are on in the Darkening of Mirkwood campaign. That's coming from Steve. Nice.
Yeah.
All right,
Darkening of
Mirkwood
Mirkwood campaign is this giant 30-year campaign that we've published.
Dang.
So 30 years game time that leads about halfway up.
Jesus.
It's good stuff.
So we have a Mirkwood Elf and a bjorning Wanderer.
Bjorning Wanderer, they're throwing Wanderer right out of
They're
this.
already,
They know what's going on.
That's
All
from
right.
Steve. Boo for the sport. Sorry, Larry. This is my thing. So we have Bjorning Wanderer and a Mirkwood Elf.
My wife actually plays a Bjorning Wanderer in our home game.
Okay, so that would be occupation.
So we'll get to that. So that's calling. So culture.
Right.
So we're gonna do Bjorning and Mirkwood Elf. Is that the
Sounds
plan?
good. Yeah.
All right. I think you deserve to have the Bjorning.
Yes.
Something just suggests that needs to be good.
All right.
All right. So that's your culture. So you're gonna put Bjorning in there, and I'm gonna be an Elf of Mirkwood.
All right, Bjorning.
All right. Now I brought along the newest supplement for the game is the Adventurer's Companion, which is the first real sort of player-focused supplement that we put out, and there's a bunch of other options in there, but mostly it kind of re-summarized the character creation process. So it'll give you a nice reference point there as we go through the core.
All right, and that's called the Adventurer Companion.
Yeah,
there.
that just came out last week.
Oh shoot!
Oh yeah,
nice.
Yeah. You still smell the ink.
Right?
Oh,
you gotta love a new book.
So at any rate, we're not going to be using much of the expanded stuff in there, but it does have a very nice summary that we can have as we flip through the core game.
What was also interesting when we talking before the show here about the mechanics of building a character, I was like, oh, so what dice do I need? And he's like, what? No.
Nope. So
nice.
this is very much a game where you're going to be assigning points. There's nothing random as the character creation process. That being said, as we move forward, we will talk about the special One Ring dice because the game does use special dice, and as we get into skills, and I'll explain a little bit about how the game works, and we can talk a bit about those. But there's no actual rolling.
Nice.
For character creation.
So, we got. I own all the books for the system. They are such beautiful books. Steve Turner. Do you know Steve?
Steve Turner. I don't think so.
No?
No.
All right. Well, Steve, thanks for joining us. Help us out with this, everybody. So we got our culture.
Okay, so next step is your character's cultural blessing. So that's going to be based on your culture. So if you can go ahead and flip your main thing there open to page 42. That's where the heart of the bjorning stuff is going to be.
Okay.
So the cultural blessing is the specific ability, if you will, that you gain simply by nature of being a bjorning.
Okay.
So, flip one more page over.
All right.
So, cultural blessing, of course, for bjornings is furious.
Wow.
So you're going to go ahead and write down furious as cultural blessing. And what that means is that bjornings fight like cornered animals. When they see their own blood, they're filled with a red wrath.
Oh, wow.
And again, we haven't gotten too much into the mechanics yet, but mostly what that means is when you are wounded, you can ignore the effects of being weary.
Okay.
So this game does not use traditional hit points or anything like that. There are endurance points, but you tend to lose them very quickly and regain them very quickly. They're more like scratches and bumps and scrapes.
Okay.
You lose them and regain them very quickly. However, when you get wounded, that's a bad scene entirely. That would be, if I were to stab you with a knife in the really real world, that would be a serious problem.
Yeah.
So that would be comparable to being wounded in this game.
Okay.
Now bjornings, when they are wounded, they can ignore being weary. And we can talk more about weary a little bit, but effectively it means you're not not as effective as you could be in combat or other things because you're a little too worn down.
Sure.
But you can ignore that because you've got the red wrath upon you when you're injured in combat. So that's what Furious means. So you can just plug in Furious there on the Cultural Blessing. Now, as an Elf of Mirkwood, I believe I am Folk of the Dust. Yes, indeed. So I am Folk of the Dust. Now you notice you've got two lines there. So if you really want to, you can say ignore the effects of weary while wounded, just as a rule reminder. Now, as an Elf of Mirkwood and having Folk of the Dust as my cultural blessing, that means when I am inside a forest or under the earth or at night, all of my attribute bonuses are based on favored ratings. Now we'll come back and circle back around to that when we talk about attributes.
All right.
But you know, as a being of moonlight and starlight, I have certain strengths when it's dark.
Nice. Matthew says that this is the best RPG out there, right? Or Zach does. Matthew, we are doing a build from the One Ring role-playing game by Cubicle 7, and with Paul Alexander.
Yeah, this is. I joke. I say that this is my favorite role-playing game of all time. That is absolutely true. As somebody who's been role-playing since the late '70s, as a very small person,
right?
This is my favorite role-playing game, and people are like, "Well, you work for Cubicle 7 now. You have to say that." To which I say, this isn't my favorite role-playing game because I work for Cubicle 7. I work for Cubicle 7 because this is my favorite role-playing game.
Perfect.
yeah. So what's next is we're gonna record the starting skill list. Now, these are the skills. Now, if you look in the character sheet here, we have 6 common skills that are arranged in columns beneath 3 different attributes.
Okay.
So body, heart, and wits are the 3 attributes, and then there are associated skills beneath each one of them.
Okay.
Now, you're going to have a rating between 0 and 6 in any of these skills.
Okay.
Now, as a starting character, most of them will be between 0 and 2, and you might have a couple of 3s. We've been playing my home game for, like I said, 4 years and change, and I think we've got one person with a 5, maybe.
Wow.
But I'm stingy with experience points. That's kind of that's also how I roll. But anyway, but yeah, so 6 is a big deal.
Okay.
So like, Elrond would have a 6 lore.
Sure.
So unless you're Elrond, you probably don't have anything remotely.
A super epic heroic.
Yeah. The scale is only 0 to 6, so there's not. Yeah. So if you've got a 6 on anything, you're something special.
Nice.
So what you're gonna do to get started is you're gonna fill in these little diamonds with the ratings that are the basic ratings for being a bjorning.
Okay, great.
And I'm gonna do something similar here as my elf. So I'm gonna have an awe of 2. Now awe, sometimes that trips people up. Awe is it's almost like intimidate. Okay. Although it can be used in a positive sense as well. Like if you think of Aragorn, pushing the doors open of the Golden Hall in Rohan. You know, like he certainly made an impression when he did that. You know, or when
so it's almost like inspire as well, but I see inspire under the heart.
Yeah, so inspire is very much a matter of spirit and charisma, whereas awe is kind of physical presence. You know, or when Gandalf reveals his white robes when trying to awaken Theoden or something. That would have been an example of awe.
Nice.
Although obviously there's something magical going on there as well. So let's see. So I'm going to get a 2 awe to start with, and I'm going to get my 3 athletics.
Josh is in the chat.
Is Githin's here? There's no hobbits here today, sir.
No hobbits.
No hobbits.
You're too late.
So Josh actually plays I have a very infrequent, once or twice a year, industry game that I run for some retailer and publisher friends that we're all at the same show so often. Right. We don't always find the time, but at least once a year, we try to get one game in. That's awesome. I've got a pair of hobbits in that game. And it's Josh Githins and my buddy Steve Ellis that runs Rainy Day Games out in Portland. Nice. Both run hobbits, and they are troublemakers in the best possible sense.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
Having known both those guys as well.
Yes. So
Hobbit lives matter.
Yeah. We are in Baltimore. All right, so you might also notice that some of the skills are underlined, and you're going to literally do that. So you've got underlined athletics. You're going to underline that word athletics. That means that is a favored skill, and I'll explain all that here in a minute once we finish plugging stuff in. I'm going to get 2 song points.
I got 3
song is
insight.
important. This is Tolkien, after all. Song matters. I've got a couple of points in battle.
I am not stealthy.
I've got 2. Well, you're a big fella. 1 in hunting, 3 in lore.
Oh, I got 3 hunting.
Yep, good times.
And riddle. I got a riddle.
Riddle's
One
good
riddle.
too.
All right.
All right. So now we get to pick. We get to pick a couple of specialties and stuff. But before we get to that, I want to explain how the basic skill mechanic works.
All right.
Right. All right. So we have here special dices.
All
right. There are, as you might imagine, special dice that you can purchase for the One Ring. They come in this color and in sort of a beige. And we've got these lovely deluxe ones that Cube Workshop has done for us.
Nice.
In a pinch, you can use regular 6-siders and 12-siders as long as you mark your 12-siders in a particular way.
Okay.
But the important part here is the 6-siders, they just have 1 through 6.
Okay.
However, the 1s, 2s, and 3s, you'll notice, are all sort of hollow and not filled in.
Right.
That matters in some instances. And the 4s, 5s, and 6s are darker.
Okay.
Right? And the 6 has a little Tengvar rune on there, and that's special too. But mostly, what's going to be happening is you're going to be rolling a number of the 6-sided dice equal to your skill,
Okay.
plus the 12-sider. So even if you have 0 in the skill, you'll always be rolling the 12-sider.
Okay.
Right? Mostly you will be, always, you will be adding up the sum of the dice rolled. Now, this 12-sider is particularly special. It has numbers from 1 to 10. Then it has Gandalf's rune,
Okay.
which is good times. And it also has an Eye of Sauron, which is bad times.
Okay.
Generally speaking, so let's say, for sake of argument, you're making an awareness roll.
All right.
You would be rolling 2 6-sided dice plus the 12-sided die.
Okay.
In almost every instance, you're trying to get a 14. If you get a 14, you succeed.
Okay.
That's what matters. We're going to ignore that for a moment, but we're going to come back to that. So let's say this happened. You've got a 14. That's a success.
All right.
Now, if you did roll a Gandalf rune, the Gandalf is an automatic success.
Yes.
So even if you've only got the 12-sider and you're not actually skilled in that skill, you still have a 1 in 12 chance of succeeding.
Nice.
All right. Now the Eye of Sauron counts as a 0.
Ooh.
Sometimes it means other things,
Oh.
but in most instances, it just means a 0.
Okay,
So
we'll go
that
with
would
that.
be a roll of 4, which would be a simple failure.
Yeah.
Right. Now I haven't explained how you get weary, but remember I mentioned weary earlier.
Yes.
That's why the colors matter.
Okay.
1s, 2s, and 3s count as 0s if you're weary.
Oh, wow.
4, 5s, and 6s still count.
Okay.
So if you're weary, some of your dice might not be actually contributing to your total.
Oh, wow.
All right. Now the other thing is that 6s are special, provided you have met your target, you've met your 14. If there's no 6s involved, that is what's called a basic success.
Okay.
If there's 1 6 involved, that is a great success. If there are 2 or more 6s involved, that is an extraordinary success. So in that way, we have 3 different levels of success.
Okay.
Again, though, you must still meet your 14.
Sure.
If you meet your 14, then you start counting the 6s.
Okay.
And stuff gets interesting. 6s on the 12-sider don't really matter.
Okay.
Right?
Nice.
All right. So that's the basic mechanic. There's a bit more to it than that, but that's the heart of it going forward here. Now, we're also going to pick our weapon skills. Checking in with the peanut gallery there.
Yeah, well, we got Travis.
Oh, Travis is in too.
Yeah,
What's he got to say?
He's saying, let's see, Travis.
I assume that's Travis Millennium.
It is Travis
Yeah.
Millennium. They're kind of talking about how the party, the 1-a-year party, is kind of weak. We sing without his request. It is awesome. Poorly, again, there is 2 hobbits in the party. Yeah, that is true. Donde and Remy are not amused with this clear hobbit exclusion technique.
Yep, those would be the 2 hobbits
So-
in my industry game. Yep.
Are there any dark characters or just heroes?
That's a fantastic question. So, let's think about Tolkien for a moment. Think about The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
One thing that this game does, and in some ways it allows me, in my shop when I talk about it with customers, it allows me to engage with some parents in a very different way, is this game has a pretty clearly defined moral compass.
Okay.
Which is, it straight up decides you are heroes. You don't get to play an orc. You don't get to play, a bad guy.
Sure.
Now, can you start teetering towards
The dark side?
that dark side? Yes.
Yes.
But that's not something you would want to do.
Okay.
Like if you think of, there are certain other IPs or certain other games where dabbling in that is fun. It's never a fun thing in this game. It's a bad scene. So the important thing is you are heroes. You are trying to make the world a better place on some level.
Okay.
And so much so that, and we can talk about this a little bit later, but there are rules for corruption and things called shadow points.
Okay.
And you will be forced to make a corruption check, even if you do something like violently threaten a prisoner.
Really?
You can get, because that's not something a good guy does.
I mean, it's not, but sometimes you got to make.
Oh, and it's happened in my game.
Okay.
Like my home game, we had a situation where they had kidnapped a bandit, you know, from a patrol that had found them, and they kidnapped the bandit and they tied him up, and they decided, well, we need to move on now. What do we do with this guy? Well, what do we do? So the elf, who was a pretty grim fellow, decided to dispatch him, and that was immediate shadow point gain.
Wow, without even there's no, it just happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
You killed what effectively was an unarmed, restrained individual. That elf.
Wow.
That elf is no longer with us.
Oh, poor guy.
That elf went out poorly.
No.
We can talk about that later.
Oh.
But it is arguably because of the path that he started.
Sure.
By killing an unarmed prisoner.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. This game gets interesting in that respect.
Okay.
But yes, so there are no real dark characters.
Okay.
That's not really in keeping with the Lord of the Rings tone.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's a battle against the shadow.
Okay.
And if you think about it, like, sure, in other games you can have half orcs and things like this.
Sure.
Orcs are bad.
Right. They're just
like almost on a genetic level.
Yeah. They're just the epitome of.
Yeah, they're bad, and we can have these next level conversations about
Yeah.
what about the poor orc children and all of this stuff. That's just not part of the Tolkien conversation.
it's not.
Like orcs are bad.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and take our weapon skills.
Yes.
So you have an option here.
Okay.
So where are we at? So you can pick option 1 or option 2. So you're gonna get 3 weapon skills. But your main decision here is whether you want to specialize in a great spear or whether you want to have axes in parentheses, which means all axes.
Okay.
So you can pick one of those 2 weapon skills.
Well, I'm not going to pick these. You guys are. Let me know, should my bjorning, which we haven't come up with a name yet, should that character be a axes guy or a great spear guy?
Similarly, my elf is either going to be a spear guy or a bow guy.
Ooh, elf, come on.
We just say guy. Have we decided that they're guys?
No, we don't get to decide that either.
All right, fair enough.
One of the other solid parts is that if you get wounded, you will likely die fighting.
Wounds are
Has
bad.
consequences.
Wounds are very bad.
Combat is super scary in this game.
Combat is super scary.
All right, so we got a spear and an axe out there. What we got to get a tiebreaker there, guys. Best 2 out of 3. Oh, spear wins for me.
All right, so you're spear.
I'm
All right.
spear.
So we're gonna put great spear. So down here for weapons,
Okay.
that's where you're gonna write in the skill. So you're
All
gonna
right.
put great spear and you're gonna underline it because it's favored.
Okay.
So you're gonna underline that. And you're gonna give yourself 2 points in that.
All right.
But then you're also gonna be slightly less skilled in axes. So just put axe 1 and dagger 1.
All right.
Now what am I doing? Am I doing spears or bow? I think I've got to go bow if you're gonna be the guy with the great spear.
I think so.
And a great spear, by the way, is you can't throw that. A great spear is like, I mean, it's a tree trunk. I mean,
Okay.
it's like a pole arm. You're not throwing the great spear.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
Jason Bradley's spears for the win. My bjorning is a spear fisherman too.
Jason Bradley is a customer of mine, I believe.
Nice. Kurt Pearson is saying bow for you.
Bow. All right. Yeah,
Bow.
I think that's the way it's got to go. All right. So
Jerry was like, hack and slash spears are just pokey. I agree. Spears can be very pokey, but I'm envisioning that I'm carrying like this like ballista.
it's a big thing, right?
Arrow is my spear.
All right. So we've got our
glorious.
weapon skills plugged in here. All right. So now we're going to pick 2 specialties. Now we're going to talk about traits a little bit.
Okay.
So, traits is a word we use to encompass both specialties and distinctive features. Specialties tend to be unique skills that you might have, whereas distinctive features are sort of personality traits. Now, traits can be invoked in the game in some very particular ways. In many other games, if you had, for example, boating, that would
Sure.
mean you'd get +1 whenever you make a boat skill check or something like that. That's not the way traits work in this game. They're much more narrative. You can use them in a variety of ways, but often they're used to simply bypass a roll. Like if you had boating and the lore master called for, you need to make a boating check to make sure that you can navigate down the Dusky River in Mirkwood, you can invoke your boating skill and say, well, you know what, I have boating, I'm confident enough that I don't need to roll, and you can just get a free pass.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Okay.
But on the flip side, what you can also do is invoke that after a successful roll of a boating skill to gain an advancement point.
Okay.
Which is sort of a parallel mechanic to experience, which we'll be talking about in a bit. But what that also does is, for instances like distinctive features, it mechanically rewards you for playing to your personality type.
Okay.
So if you were Grim, and you invoked Grim on top of a successful Awe roll, for example, you would get an advancement point.
Okay.
So that you're actually gaining
More.
advancement points because you're playing to the character types that you've stated
cool.
the character has.
Nice. I'm getting, based on this mechanic, that this game is RP heavy.
It is, but what I find really interesting about it is that there's definitely a certain elegance to the way that all the mechanics work together, and it's very RP heavy. But there's enough what I call knobs and widgets that you can fiddle with all of the minutia of your character that you still feel like you've got that level of detail where you're fiddling with your character.
Okay.
It's not Pathfinder where
Right.
it's this giant
It was slide
equation.
rules.
Yeah, right.
All right.
And you can drill down to each little thing.
Sure.
The detail is still there, but there aren't necessarily specific rules associated with those details.
Okay.
Instead, the details are there to push story forward.
Perfect. I love it.
Which is utterly to my play style
Right.
because that's kind of how I roll.
Nice. So specialties, it says for me to choose two traits from the following: Anduin lore, beast lore, cooking, fishing, mountaineering, or storytelling. Now, again, because you guys are supposed to help us build these characters, which of those two do you think best fits the bjorning character that I'm going to be playing?
So just as a reminder for folks listening, Anduin lore. So Anduin is the Great River. So
Okay.
it starts way in the north of Wilderland and flows all the way down to Minas Tirith. So the Great River in Lord of the Rings that they took the boats to, that the
Right.
remainder of the Fellowship took south.
Okay.
That is the Anduin, and the Anduin is sort of the
That
Great
covers a
River.
lot.
It covers a lot.
Wow.
So again, the Bjornings, by nature of who they are defenders of the Anduin Vale, of the land surrounding the Anduin.
Right.
So that's where Anduin lore would come in.
Okay.
Sort of thematically.
So, so what do you guys think we should take here? Kurt says pipe smoking for the win.
That's not an option.
We got a beast lore, storytelling. I do like storytelling. If I were to choose myself, I would go Anduin lore and storytelling.
I think it's a solid.
I think because
Yeah,
with
yeah.
all the lore, I can absolutely come up with stories
Yep.
about things going down there. So, what do you guys think? We got a
Anduin lore actually comes in handy mechanically a lot
Okay.
too.
All right.
Because we haven't talked about journeys at all, but it is Tolkien, which means there's lots of walking. But it's
I don't do a lot of that.
but this guy does.
Oh yeah, thank
this
God.
guy
Thank
does.
God it's a role playing
No,
game.
it's not a LARP.
Woo!
It's not a LARP. Yeah. You didn't wear your hiking boots today?
Never.
Yeah.
All right, so I am going to take Anduin lore, and because storytelling was already dropped, and so was Anduin lore. All right.
All right, so my options as my Mirkwood elf, we've got boating, elven lore, fire making, Mirkwood lore, swimming, and woodwright.
Woodwright. That sounds interesting.
I like woodwright.
Huh.
Yep. And Mirkwood lore is not bad.
Right. I mean, there's again a lot of, when you're out on an adventure searching for things, you might want to know a little bit about the area.
And for those folks that are a little more mechanically inclined, those lore traits and specialties do come in handy with the journey tests because they allow you to sort of finagle some of your preliminary rolls as you're getting ready to move around.
Jerry R. Mize, Jerry says, go with the
Woodwright.
Woodwright.
All right, I need one more.
And take lore. That's coming from Travis.
So elven lore or Mirkwood lore?
Elvin or Mirkwood, Travis? Your entire adventure is just the two of you telling each other stories. That would be a fun Tavern Tales.
That's kind of what role-playing games are.
Right?
We're just going to tell stories. But yeah, anyway.
That'd be fun.
I don't know if actually playing this game with only two characters, that'd be interesting.
Oh, we'd probably die really fast.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, the lore master would have to make certain adjustments, but...
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't get to shoot my bow a lot because we'd be overwhelmed long before.
I just figured we'd just go to a tavern. We'd just sit there and tell each
There's
other
that.
tales of
There's
of
that.
Anduin lore. And
So the next supplement coming out for this game is actually Bree, which will detail the Prancing Pony.
oh,
Which
okay.
is the the seminal inn of all of
everybody
fantasy
goes
and role
there.
playing.
That's where every adventure starts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Tolkien world or not, you start at the Prancing Pony.
It starts at the Prancing Pony. So what are we doing? We doing elf lore or Mirkwood lore? I think Elven lore is probably.
Okay.
What's he say?
Everybody has said Mirkwood.
All right. Well, never mind then. We're doing Mirkwood lore. All right. So it is. Okay.
Scott, you should absolutely pick up some Tolkien literature, and to supplement that literature, you should pick up the One Ring if you don't already have it.
One Ring is good stuff, man. All right. So now we're going to choose a background.
Okay.
Now, every culture comes with 6 sample backgrounds.
All right.
And you can either randomly decide or you can pick one. It would take sort of a while for us to go through all of them because they are, in fact, sort of a bit of a narrative history of your character.
Okay.
The nature of the backgrounds is that it's very easy just to pick one and go, but there's nothing stopping you from kind of rewriting the background, obviously, you know, and to suit your needs. But what it does do, it provides some additional skills and traits as well as your basic starting attributes.
Okay. So for me, the 6 backgrounds that we can choose from are Child of Two Folks, Errand Rider, Head of the Family, Lightfoot, Keeper of Tales, and Voice from the Past.
Well, you're going to dive into the detail of that.
Yeah.
How about I just roll for mine?
Okay. Yeah, because I want you guys to help me pick mine.
Yeah. So we can get into the details of that. I'm just going to roll for mine to see what we end up with here. I got a 2. Ooh, a musical legacy for me.
Nice.
Yeah, good times. All right.
So we're literally tavern.
We
guys.
are tavern folk.
All right. Keeper, Voice from the Past? Keeper or voice? Oh, Voice from the Past. The elders and ancient warriors of your tribe spend the long evening hours talking in front of the earth on the step dais of the main hall. To the young and restless, their soft speaking may seem idle talk, but you'd love to listen to their wise words as they exchange tales and songs. It absolutely seems to be what my character would be, because as a storyteller, myself maybe trying to harness all the stories that I will gain on my adventures to take back and speak on that as well, and also the stories of my people. It's kind of how I'm feeling that.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks guys. Voice from the Past. That's a good one.
So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll keep diving into the details of your stuff with our peanut gallery. And I can sort of make some decisions.
And this is under the background.
All right, so
where does that?
So what did we end up with here? Voice from the Past.
Voice from the Past.
So you can just plug this in here. Now, obviously, you've got a bunch of lines you can write, however much of your character background, you know, as you like. Now, for me, and this applies to the way I play all role-playing games, is that anybody that gives me a real meaty background, I'm going to throw some extra experience points your way in order to because any background, any extra background material that I get from my players is just story hooks later on.
Right.
You know, and if I can wrap a story around this little tiny detail that you put in your background, that means, A, I've got a story idea, right? But it also means you're going to be personally invested in it.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, that's not necessarily written into this game. That's just kind of how I've always done role-playing. But, so do we give a good overview of what this...
Yeah, basically... but you love to listen to the wise words as they exchange tales and songs, as old as the intricate images would wind around the wooden pillars of the hall. One day you might well end up adding your own words to the songs of your folk.
You are straight up a storyteller and a historian of your people.
And I love that.
All right. So we're gonna plug in the details that this provides for you.
Okay.
So your basic attributes, and you're gonna put this in the big bubble here.
All right.
Your basic body is 7, your heart is 4, and your wits is 3.
Nice.
Right? Favored skill is song, so you're going to underline song. So now you have an additional favored skill.
Okay.
And now you're going to pick 2 distinctive features. Now these are much like specialties, except these are more personality features.
All right.
You're going to pick 2 of these to go along with your character. Now, I'm going to tell you now what I picked here to go along with mine, as I picked cunning and proud.
Nice.
As part of my musical legacy. My father was a minstrel of great virtue, whose work will be praised for countless years. His talent passed along to you, but transformed into a love for the music that lies in plain speech. Your voice is pleasing to all listeners, and you choose your words much as your fingers choose the strings on the harp.
Nice.
We are some traveling
bards.
Storytelling folk.
Yeah, I like it.
So I got a favored courtesy, and like I said, I selected proud and cunning as my distinctive features.
So my distinctive features that I can choose from are generous, grim, proud, robust, steadfast, tall, vengeful, and wrathful. So again, I'm putting together a bjorning based on what you guys like, This is a One Ring. For those if we got anybody new jumping in, we're doing a character build for the One Ring, a role-playing game by Cubicle 7, featuring all of the great Hobbit lore from Tolkien. It's actually, I'm having a lot of fun with this because just the character build is given so much meat to it already.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You'll walk away from this with a real idea of what's going on with the character. So again, just remember, there are not associated specific rules for each of these. So and again, that's a bit of a disconnect from folks maybe coming from some other role-playing systems. Just because you are vengeful doesn't mean that there's a rule that you have to look up to see what vengeful means. Like you're going to invoke the fact that you're vengeful over the course of the game.
Right. Okay. Now I'm not taking vengeful, but you did, right?
No, I took proud. That was the other one that we had in
Okay.
common, which is where I brought it up. So I took proud and cunning.
I'm going. We've got robust.
I like arrogant elves. That's generally. I mean,
that's how they're
most
written.
elves I like run a little arrogant. Yeah.
So someone already mentioned robust. We've got wrathful, grim and swift. I take my fish trader job seriously and need to get them and news along the river quickly. That's a great background there, Jason. And just want to say hi to everybody in the chat room. If I haven't called you out or shouted out to you already, I appreciate you guys joining us. We really do appreciate the community we're putting together here and all the help that we're getting. So we got robust and looks like wrathful is going to be the other.
Wrathful. All right.
Yeah. Maybe I can use wrathful.
Pleasant of song and voice, but don't get us mad.
Yeah, don't make me mad. That was a true story. My grandfather told me that story. You're wrong. And then I go all crazy. And
then it's a bad scene.
Yep.
Shadow points all around.
Right.
All right. So, so select two distinctive features. So we just did that.
Yep.
All right. So now we're at the point where we've selected the kind of the chunks that are the basic building blocks of our character, and now we get to really drill in a little bit and do some customization.
Nice.
All right? So first of all, we're going to pick favorite attributes.
All right.
Which means we're going to have our numbers for each of our attributes are going to be slightly higher. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to explain what that means.
Okay.
Now, we remember how the basic mechanic works, right? So let's look at all. So let's say your big bjorning fellow is plowing his way into an inn in Lake Town, and you're trying to make an impression as you're storming in. You're going to roll 3 6-sided dice plus the 12-sided in an attempt to get 14. Right. Now, what we haven't talked about yet, in connection with Shadow, there's something called hope.
Okay.
You're going to have some hope points. Hope is a finite resource that can be used to help you achieve skills and achieve skill rolls and also generally succeed at what you do. Okay. Now, if you think about the stories, it's often the companionship of your friends and the fellowship of the folk that are around you that help buoy you towards success and not get bowled under by the darkness of the world, right?
Sure.
So those hope points are important, but they're also finite. There are a few, but not many, ways in which to regain them.
Oh, wow.
So you will typically start with a lot, and as a beginning character, you will rely on hope a lot more than as a more experienced character who might have less hope and is relying more on their basic skills.
Okay.
But here's the main way that hope works. Let's say you're making an all check, and you're trying to get a 14, and you end up with
not a 14.
You end up with not a 14, right? So let's say we got an 11, right? Now, if you spend a point of hope, you can add the associated attribute from the column.
Okay.
So with all, it's associated with body. You've got a 7 body because you're a big fellow.
Right.
So you can add 7 to your roll here, which would kick it over to success.
Right.
So you roll and you didn't quite make it, but by spending a point of hope, you can kick that over to a 7, right?
Okay.
Now, we've been underlining a few of these skills as we go along. Those are favored skills. Okay. What favored skills do is when you spend a point of hope to increase a roll there, you're going to add the favored value of the attribute.
Okay.
So what we're going to do now is decide what exactly those favored attributes are. And you do that, you've got one of them you can add 1 to, one of them you can add 2 to, and one of them you can add 3 to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you're just going to decide where to split up those values of 1, 2, and 3, and you're just going to put the new sum in the favored.
Okay. So for those of you that just heard all that in regards to adding my favorite points to my attributes, where do you think they should go? I already have a 7 body, so the robust is there. I'm robust, I'm big. Do I need to add a higher number there for favored, or do I need to bring it down to my wits or heart? Put the 3 on heart and then 2 on wits and 1 on body. What do you guys think about that?
So for my money, I'm putting my bonus 3 points on heart because as a folk with a musical legacy, I'm favored in courtesy, but I don't have any courtesy points.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to be able to add 7 to that roll instead of just 4.
That's kind of how I was feeling too, because I feel with storytelling and all of that, I want to be able to inspire.
Well, don't forget, song is actually associated with body as well.
Oh yeah. Well, shoots.
And song would typically be the skill that you roll with storytelling. Like if you're because song isn't just music;
Right.
it's also tales and whatnot.
Dang, that makes it a little bit more difficult. If fighter, you want a buff bod. Well, that's true. Adds to your lore. There you go. Whatever adds to your lore.
So that's wits. Now again, though, it's worth remembering the favorite attribute only really matters for favorite skills.
Right.
And right now you've only got 2, and they're both in the body section.
Okay, so all right. Based on that, I'm going to put the 2 in wits. So my wits will go to 5. My heart will go to 5 as well, and 3 here will now be 10.
Favorite body of 10 is ridiculous.
Yes.
That's just ridiculous. that's like dwarf body ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So easy enough. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna spend what we call previous experience.
Okay.
We're gonna have a number of sort of abstracted points to add to our existing skills.
Okay.
Right. And the way that works is that we're going to get. I have to remind myself. It's 10 points.
Wow.
And we're gonna flip to this chart here. Right.
All right.
You're going to get 10 points to spend on increasing your existing skills. Now, there are common skills, which are all of these guys here that are associated with your attributes, and then there are your weapon skills. Right? So weapon skills are considerably more expensive.
Okay.
And the points that you're paying is equal to the new value. So, for example, if you have a 0, so your battle is 0. If you want to raise battle to 1, that would cost you 1 point of these 10 previous experience points. If you wanted to then raise that again to 2, it'd be 2 more. So they're all cumulative.
Total of 3.
So none of these experience points carry over. They're simply 10 points to spend to customize your skill set before we move on.
All right. So what we got going on here? Heart leads to inspire. Now again, back to the chat room. I feel because I did put a lot in body because of my favorite being athletic and song. I have no points in song. I probably want to boost that up a little bit. So
not a bad idea.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it up to 2 points to cost 3 total out of my 10. So I'm down to 7.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this game is there's nothing really resembling a dump stat. Like all of these skills will be relevant at some point, whether it's song or riddle or something. They all come up over the course of normal play.
Okay.
And early on, when I was playing this game with some regularity, during what we call the fellowship phase, which is sort of a structured way in which to spend experience points and increase your character that's also wrapped around a narrative instead of just, I'm spending points to raise a skill. It's a little more structured than that. But during the fellowship phase, when my players were deciding where to spend their points, they were in all earnestness saying things like, man, I really need that extra point in song. Like, what other game does that happen in? Right? Or, I really need courtesy. Like, it just doesn't happen in other games. And especially having played it now for quite a while, there are no dump stats.
Okay.
Now, there are certain things that players aren't, that some characters just won't be very good at or won't partake in very often, but all of them will come up at some point.
Okay.
Which I think is really neat.
So I think also magic resistance. Is there anything like that?
No, there isn't. So let's talk about magic for a little bit. There aren't really spells in this game.
Okay.
Because if you think about Tolkien, there aren't what we traditionally associate as high fantasy fireball throwing and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Even Gandalf, who, it's worth remembering, isn't really a human.
Right.
Gandalf is sort of an angel, right?
Right.
Gandalf is one of these 3. He's one of 5 wizards. There's only 5.
Right.
You don't get to be one of those, right? Even he at his greatest wasn't doing very flashy stuff. Right? Other than maybe, taking that strike from the Balrog at some point. But even that took him out, in a manner of speaking, right? So there's not a lot of very big flashy magic in this game, in keeping with Tolkien's spirit. Similarly, in the main role-playing game, there are not, in fact, magic weapons. Now, we're going to get to some special weapons a little bit later.
Sure.
But there's no +6 Vorpal sword in this game. Right? Again, if you think about it, the single most iconic magic weapon in this setting is Sting.
Right.
What does it do?
It glows.
It glows. When orcs are near. Not trolls.
Right.
Just orcs.
Just orcs.
Now, is it a finely crafted sword? Is it probably one of the best swords that any of our main characters in the books are fighting with? Yes, it's a fine sword, but it doesn't speak. It doesn't cast lightning bolts.
Sure.
It's just a damn good elven sword,
turn into
and it
fire.
glows. Right.
All right.
So magic. While there's always a presence of magic in the game, there are very few instances where you're going to be directly targeted by a magical effect.
Okay.
It's definitely going to be more of you're overcome by shadow in one case or another.
Okay.
So that's going to fall back on your wisdom, which we haven't talked about yet, and just sort of the spirit of your character sort of resisting that.
Okay.
But it's not a magical effect as we would explain it in certain other games.
Okay.
So there is no spell casting class in this
Okay.
game.
That makes sense.
There are some kind of magically type stuff you can do based on culture, and we'll get to that. Like I'm an elf. There's some stuff I
might be
can
some
do,
stuff. All
right?
right.
But it's not a spell per se,
Okay.
and it's not something I'm targeting you with.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay,
magic resistance, not quite.
All right.
It's worth noting that hope has a very significant relationship to shadow points, and as
Okay.
you become, as you become more and more affected by the effects of the shadow, your hope score will be very important.
Okay.
Now, as you might expect, what culture do you think has the most hope points?
I would say the hobbits.
It's the hobbits,
Yeah.
right? So, and hobbits actually not only have the most hope points individually, but they contribute to the overall well-being of the fellowship simply by their good cheer and their nature of who they are.
Nice.
So you're gonna get that flavor of the hobbits being able to resist that shadow, but that's less of hobbits can resist magic and more they're such simple good folk
Right.
that they're not as they're not necessarily as impacted by the evil doings
Okay.
of the world.
I can see that, and especially in the writings of the Hobbit, they hadn't been affected by the world. So kind of
Yeah, they're very much their own thing.
Right.
Now, we know now they probably had some help from the Rangers on the outskirts, but that's
Right.
But yeah.
All right, so so I've already spent 3 of my points.
I should see what I want to do here. So
How about corruption? I want to be a servant of Sauron. Well, that goes
this
back
is not the game for you.
right. That goes back to it being this is a heroic game. There's only a few magicians. Peter Jackson begs to differ. So I feel like because I like the Great Spear, it is my chosen weapon.
That's going to be a lot of points.
It's going to be.
It's going to be 6. Do you have 6 points left?
I have 6 points.
All
I have
right.
7. Wow. Do I want to do
right.
that?
Now, the other thing you haven't... No.
I have no battle.
So battle is sort of like tactics. So
Okay.
you do get to roll battle before every fight, and that will provide you with what they call advantage dice that you can spend over the course of the battle.
Yeah, because I was torn between the two, and I feel maybe now if I spend 3 on battle, it'll give me 2 pips there, and that will still give me 4 to spend, and I know that I want to drop a 1 on
In
a
my
couple
experience,
others.
any starting character that has a 3 and a weapon skill is a pretty effective fighter out the gate.
Okay.
Like 2 is okay, but 3 is
In the field.
3's pretty hardcore for a beginning character. I know a lot of people that don't like to have a character that doesn't have a 3 in weapons.
Okay.
But again, it depends on your style of play and also your lore master style of play and how much fighting is going to happen.
Right. Or do I just want to be a liar and say I beat that guy when I really didn't?
Right.
And add that into my stories.
Yeah, a riddle or song.
All right.
Well, I think I'm going to take a point of courtesy because,
Is it important?
well, one of us ought to have it.
Perfect. I'm not doing it.
So I'll be the clever tongued fellow.
All
We'll
right.
see what we can do there.
So I took 2 in battle, drops me down to 4. I want to take 1 in lore, drops me down to 3.
Travel's pretty important too. If you don't have travel, like I said,
travel. I was
we're gonna
thinking
be
about that.
we're gonna be walking a lot, and without travel, that can be pretty
Which leaves me with
exhausting.
2 points. Let's go with 1 explorer. I kind of want to be well-rounded, and I'm not stealthy. We'll go with persuade because I want them to believe my stories.
Sure. I might.
We're gonna go okay.
I'm gonna take a second point in sword actually.
Travel.
Because I think travel's important.
Jay Cullen is like, I told you so. Travel.
Yeah.
I can see
travel's
where a
important.
lore master could say, "This is a finely crafted element." They could give a plus or something. Is that flexibility built into the system?
What was the question?
Jerry says, "I could see where a lore master could say that that is a finely crafted elven blade or whatever. And at that point, could they give it a plus or something?
So
flexibility.
That's sort of beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. But there are what they call cultural rewards. Okay. So as the players progress, as the characters progress, they will not only be gaining skills, but they will be gaining valor and wisdom. And that's sort of one of the last steps that we do of character creation. But as your wisdom goes up, you gain virtues, which can be tied to your culture, which is where maybe my elf might be able to do some elfy magic, or your bjorning might be able to do something like send his spirit out as a bear in the middle of the night or something like that. Like that's where the sort of magically stuff happens.
I wouldn't be upset with that.
But rewards that are tied to valor are items that you get as part of your culture, or simply just improving your weapons.
Okay.
So there is that built-in thing that allows you to make weapons that are better than off the rack, if you will.
Sure.
And often, particularly with the cultural rewards, they're very flavorful. So you will not miss those +1 swords, I promise you. There's other stuff that scratches that itch in a very compelling way.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've spent all my points.
So have I. I took a sword level 2, so I've got so I'm equally as competent with a bow and a sword.
Okay.
And I increased some courtesy.
Nice.
And there we are.
Again, for those of you that are just tuning in or are joining us, we are doing a character build for the One Ring role-playing game by Cubicle 7, and this all takes place in Tolkien's world. And my character is a bjorning, who seems to be fleshing out to be a storyteller, a lore master of some sort.
Yeah, and my elf of Mirkwood is a musician, and somebody who has a love for speaking. So we're some traveling talkers, is what it comes down to.
We're almost like politicians.
It's something. It's something, right?
What's next on
so next we're going to pick calling. So calling is the closest thing this game has to a class.
Okay.
Right now, other games, class very much has a huge set of rules that's involved with it. There's very little actual rules mechanics that are involved with calling. More importantly, what calling is the reason why you became an adventurer.
Okay.
Right? It's what it is that that chose you to take life to the take to the road to seek out adventure.
Okay.
And you've got a couple options. Let's see if I've got a. So really, the basic options are scholar, slayer, treasure hunter, wanderer, and warden.
Okay.
So again, these are sort of like archetypes. Now these are going to be in the. These are going to be in the.
Here.
Yeah, those are. Yeah. Now leader is a new one that's introduced in the Adventurer's Companion.
All right.
But if we stick with the basics, I think somebody said we actually should do a bjorning wanderer earlier.
Yeah, custom.
He suggested wanderer. So scholar, as you might expect, is somebody who's going to be motivated by the gaining of knowledge.
Right.
Slayer is somebody who, for one reason or another, has beef against a particular kind of enemy.
Okay.
So in my home game, for example, we have a woodman who is a slayer who has problems with the spiders of Mirkwood because his brother disappeared.
Okay.
As a young person, so he's got a grudge against the spiders. Treasure hunter, we all know some famous treasure hunters in the setting. Whether Bilbo started as a treasure hunter, he was certainly he was expected to be a burglar by the end of things. A wanderer is just a person who's motivated by seeing the wonders of the world and interacting with the people. And a warden would be somebody like your traditional ranger, if you would, somebody who really wants to see the free peoples of Middle Earth succeed and be protected from the horrors of the shadow.
And someone had already in the chat mentioned wanderer, as you also said, and I think that actually fits this character.
I think so.
Everything else is too far to the left,
right,
for him. So I'm gonna go with the wanderer.
I think I'm gonna go warden, actually.
Nice.
Because as I wander about, I sort of like the idea that as I'm telling stories and speaking to folks, that as a long-lived elf, I sort of know what might be coming, or at least where we've been, and why we should always be wary of such problems in the future. So from there, what your calling is going to do is it's going to give you a couple more options for favored skills. So as a warden, you can pick 2 more favored skills.
So you get personality and survival.
I get personality and survival, and as a wanderer, you get custom and survival. So you'll notice each of these rows is sort of in a category.
Okay.
So you can pick 2 more skills to underline as favorite skills, and they could come from either or both of those categories. So 2 total, but they have to come from either of those 2 categories.
So
So yours are custom and survival. So you've only got 6 options. So it's the 6 that are associated with custom. So it's song, courtesy, and riddle.
Yeah.
Or the 3 that are associated with survival. So explore, healing, hunting. So those are the 6. You can pick any 2 of those.
We'll go hunting.
As new favored. And let's see. I'm gonna I've got personality and survival.
And
I'm gonna go healing and
riddle.
And I think persuade.
There we go.
All right, easy enough.
Jason says his wanderer or warden protects and patrols.
Oh, nice. All right. So then we're also going to get 1 new trait that's associated with our calling. So you will get Folklore,
Okay.
and I will get Shadow Lore.
Nice.
So you're just going to add that to your specialties list.
Okay.
So Folklore means you, as a well-traveled individual, you have knowledge of the customs of the various free peoples throughout Mirkwood. And Shadow Lore, as you might expect, means I know about all the dark things in the setting, whether they be orcs or spiders, or I sort of know the movements of the enemy, if you will, right? Then we're going to get a shadow weakness. I'm going to come back exactly how that works in a moment, but you're going to write this down here. That's the path that your character will take if things go poorly in the spiritual sense and you gain too many shadow points.
I don't like the one that like what that says.
Yeah. So you're gonna end up with Wandering Madness.
Yeah.
And I have Lure of Power.
All right.
Wandering
Madness.
Now we haven't gotten too far into the hope and shadow mechanic, but basically, the simple version is as you spend hope and your hope is slowly going down, you will also be gaining shadow, whether you're in a particularly dark part of Mirkwood and it affects you poorly, or maybe horror of horrors, you get stabbed with a Morgul blade or something really terrible.
Which we don't want.
Your shadow points are going to be going up.
Okay.
The relationship between those 2 is very important. If your shadow points ever exceed your current hope points, you have to check the box that says miserable.
Oh, I don't want that.
Now, if that happens,
it's right here.
Whenever you roll that Eye of Sauron, very bad things happen.
Okay.
You have what's called a bout of madness. Your shadow points will go away, but one of them will become permanent.
Oh.
And then you will gain the first shadow trait associated with your shadow weakness. Now, if you think back to the stories, this is literally a mechanic to represent that moment when Boromir tried to take the ring from Frodo.
Okay.
So between you and the lore master, you will concoct a bit of story around maybe the role that you failed, or the role that you rolled the Eye of Sauron on, or maybe whatever it is, the action that you were doing, or maybe the shadow trait that you will be gaining. But in some way, you need to do something that's very bad for you and your companions.
Okay.
So in my home game, a few examples that have come up was we had a warden, we had an elf warden who had slowly become sort of arrogant and sort of felt like he was the only one that was doing anything and none of the companions were helping. So when they got ambushed late one night, he saw the ambush coming and decided, you guys can handle this.
Yeah, I've done enough.
I've done enough.
Oh,
yep.
Wow.
Yep. So, and then we also had a moment where our bjorning wanderer, who was the group's hunter, had a bout of madness where they were out in the wastes north of Erebor, and she just gave up. She just decided there's nothing to eat out here.
Okay.
So we decided she wasn't even going to make the hunting roll. She just failed outright. She's like, I'm not. She's like, there's nothing. She had a moment of despair.
Oh no.
And so she didn't even try. So these are the moments when you can really, between the player and the lore master, really work together to develop those.
A cool storyline.
Yeah. So, and it's not PvP. It's not you're fighting your companions, but it's something that you're going to regret later.
Sure.
Right? And it's sort of a character-defining moment.
Nice.
Now, so for example, if you think of, and all of these have examples in the text of the original story. So if you think of lore of power for a warden, that might be Denethor. Right? Right. Gondor needs no king. And and Denethor, feels like he's got it under control. He doesn't need anybody else's help, right? That's the lore of power in action.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So there's you can return to the texts of the novel in order to get some inspiration there.
Nice.
But there's a fair amount of extra rules there involving how your shadow weakness will play out. And remind me sometime I'll tell you the story of how the shadow weakness of our elf led to his demise.
All right.
He went out not as a hero.
Oh.
Yeah, it was bad.
That's no good.
It was tragic and wonderful.
I don't doubt it. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. You guys have been blowing it up over here. Boo, trolls are my favorite. Is there any class or race you always use more than others? This is my first time, so...
No, so in my home game, we've had 2 character deaths over the course of our couple years, and we've seen a little bit of everything. We haven't had a dwarf yet in my home game, but we've had a Hobbit, and we've had we've had a bjorning and a woodman and an elf of Mirkwood. In fact, the current Hobbit with the group is actually a wild Hobbit, which is a special variant that you can find in a few of the supplements.
Okay.
They're not from the Shire. They live in the mud holes in and around the Anduin. It's like the sort of the more ancient remnants of hobbits from before they went to the Shire.
Nice.
Maybe where somebody named Smeagol might have come from back in the day originally.
Okay.
Maybe. Not to suggest any sort of genetic predisposition for being evil, but that's sort of the river hobbits from back in the day.
Okay.
So no, I think a lot of it comes down to your player group. I mean, like I said, the game that I run for some industry fans, it's got 2 hobbits.
Right.
It's got 2 hobbits, an elf of Mirkwood, and a woodman.
Nice.
And the hobbits sort of two hobbits together lend a very different tone to the game.
Sure.
Merry and Pippin doing their
Yeah,
thing.
and you said that they start with a lot of hope. So
They do.
it's
Not only
gotta
that, but they add points to the fellowship rating, which is sort of a group hope that we can pull from over the course of any session.
All right, cool. So what's next?
So next is Valour and Wisdom.
All
so
right.
remember I mentioned Valour and Wisdom.
Yes.
They do 2 things. One is that they're going to give you those special virtues or those special rewards.
Yes.
But they're also going to be rolled like skills for certain things. So when you make a corruption check, you're rolling wisdom as if it were a skill. So if you had a wisdom of 2, you'd be rolling 2 6s plus the 12 to make a corruption check. Similarly, a fear check with Valor.
Okay.
Right? Now what you need to decide is which one of those you're going to start with a 1 and which one you're going to start with a 2.
Wait, that's it? That's all I get?
That's it. A 1, because they only go to 6. Like anything else, it only goes to 6.
All right. So
So in my home game, after many years, I have a woodman with a wisdom of 4. That's the highest rating we've had.
Wow.
Because you're spending those points on other things.
Yeah.
Now, more importantly, or at least more interestingly for character creation, is if you start with a 2 wisdom, you get to start with a virtue, which is one of those special abilities.
Yeah.
Either specific to your culture or a more generic one.
Okay.
If you start with a 2 valor, you start with a special weapon. Again, either specific to your culture or something a little more general.
So again, that's going to go back to you guys.
That's
watching.
huge, right?
So what should I put my 2 in? Do I want to be the 2 wisdom and get the extra?
Get the virtue.
Get
the virtue.
Or do I want to start with 2 valor
And get a reward.
Get a
Get
rewarded
a special
weapon.
item. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a
Weapon
tough
or
one.
armor, I should say. It's weapon or armor.
Weapon or armor.
Yeah. But the virtues are the things. So like you're a bjorning. So as exciting as the weapons may sound, you're a bjorning, which also means like as a virtue you could take Nightgoer, which is the thing that lets you take your spirit into the form of a bear at night. Or maybe you know how to make Bjorn's special twice-baked honey cakes.
Is that important?
Do you want extra hope points?
Always. I feel like that's really important.
That's what the twice-baked honey cakes are for. How could you not be hopeful if you're eating twice-baked honey cakes?
Right?
Right?
Let's see what we got going on here. People are saying valor. We got 1 valor. I'm going to go best 2 out of 3. So let Paul take wisdom. That's what everybody's telling Paul to do. Go for better song. Michael's. That's it.
You want to go Valor? I think you're the fighter of the group.
I think
I'm
I
sort of
would-
the arrogant dude.
All right.
But I kind of like me having the 2 wisdom makes a certain amount of sense.
All right.
All right. So
Done.
we've decided that. So now we're going to generate our scores for endurance and hope, which is very simple. You are a bjorning. What is your basic heart rating?
I have 4.
It is 4. So that means your endurance. You're going to put that in this top thing here.
Okay.
Your endurance is going to be 28.
All right.
All right.
Wow.
Which is a lot because you're a bjorning. Bjornings tend to have more endurance than anybody other than a dwarf.
Okay.
And your heart is going to be 8 plus your heart of 4. So you're going to end up with 12 hope. So your hope, again, your starting hope score is going to be 12.
That seems pretty good.
It's pretty solid, right? Now, for me, Elves of Mirkwood, I'm going to have 22 plus my heart, so I'm going to have 26 endurance.
Okay.
And my hope is also 8 plus heart, so I will also have a 12 hope.
Nice.
Right now, just as point of comparison, if you had been a hobbit, you would have had 16 starting hope points.
Wow. Okay.
Because hobbits,
they're
hobbits,
jolly.
They're not tough fellows, but
No.
they're there. They're there to support you in a pinch.
They are.
right.
I mean, Merry and Pippin, and they were like.
Oh yeah. Or I mean, Samwise and Frodo, right?
Right. Well,
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you.
Right.
Like yeah.
That's
I mean,
hope.
absolutely. So zipping along from there. Now, what I think is the most fun part of the thing, which is picking your in your case, your reward.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So there's a number of options. And again, you can pick a cultural reward, which is where the real flavorful stuff comes in.
Okay.
Or you can pick a more generic one, and forgive me, I forget exactly what they're called. But let's see, 102. So, all right. So virtues and rewards.
All right.
So we're gonna.
And we're in page 102.
No, we're gonna be 115.
All right.
All right. Now we haven't actually decided what kind of armor we're gonna start with. Now, unlike other games, we don't give you gold and you spend points on gold. You just decide what kind of armor you want.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And there's a standard of living thing that we'll sort of gloss over for now. But you're gonna just decide what kind of armor you want. Gold and treasure are sort of abstracted in this game because nobody wants to keep track of individual gold points. I mean, some folks do, but so qualities, which is what they call the non-culture specific rewards, are listed here. So you could have cunning make in your armor, which makes the encumbrance lower. Close fitting armor, which gives you extra protection rating. Reinforced shield, you won't be using a shield because your spear is a two-handed weapon. Or you can make your spear grievous, keen, or fell, all of which changes the statistics of the weapon, which we haven't talked about too much.
And that's where I'm choosing from those for my...
Or, right, so there's the sort of the non-cultural specific qualities. Right. Or you can pick a cultural reward for bjorning. So you could have a giant slaying spear.
Yikes.
Which doesn't sound like a bad idea. Noble armor or splitting axe.
Okay.
So all of these have various special abilities. And again, it's not a spear +1, but it'll have a very specific
well, I
use.
absolutely am going to say I like the giant slaying spear.
How could you, I mean, right? Like you're the guy with the great big spear.
Right.
Why would you not want the giant slaying spear?
Because I can tell so many stories based around this spear that was handed down through generations in my family. And you're gonna like it, or I'm gonna become wrathful. At least that's what it says on my character sheet.
Yeah, that's what it says on the character sheet. And if you act wrathful, you will actually be mechanically rewarded.
Nice.
So let's get the basic stats for the Great Spear, so we can sort of talk about how that works. Now, without getting too deep into the rules here, you're still going to be rolling a basic. You're going to be rolling the 6-siders equal to your spear skill plus the 12-sider.
Okay.
But instead of needing a straight 14, your target number for attacking during combat is going to be based on a combat stance, and we won't get too far into that right now. But know that you can be open or defensive, or you can be forward, which is effectively charging, and there's a little more to combat than just.
And I'll just put that under rewards here. Giant
well, let's go ahead and plug in your basic stats on a Great Spear here, so we can see what that looks like. Okay. So a Great Spear, it's gonna have a damage of 9.
Okay.
And an edge of 9.
Oof.
And an injury of 16.
Okay.
And an encumbrance of 4. Now, what does all that mean?
Seems like it's a little heavy.
And we're going to plug this in here too, actually. Your basic damage is equal to your basic body. So plug in that big bubble there, you're going to put a 7.
All right.
And your parry is actually going to be your wits, which is 3.
All right.
All right. Now, when you roll a hit, if you successfully hit, and again, the target number won't be 14, it'll be based on your style of fighting.
Sure.
But if you successfully hit, you're going to cause 9 points of damage.
Wow.
It's that simple. It's 9 points of damage against your target's endurance points.
Okay.
If you get a great success, so if one of those, if something that took you over, if you got at least 1 6, you're going to add this to your total.
Yikes.
And if you get an extraordinary success, you're going to add twice that. You're a big dude with a big spear. You're a monster.
Yeah.
You're gonna be tearing apart.
Slaying
Yeah.
I like
so you're gonna be doing typically 9 points of damage, but plus 7 or even potentially 14, depending on how good your roll is.
Okay.
Now, the other thing about combat is that if you succeed with the roll on the 12-sided die, you want to see if you made edge. An edge in this instance is 9. So if you have succeeded with 9 or more,
okay.
So if this die shows a 9, a 10, or a Gandalf rune, that means you've potentially caused a wound. That means you're probably causing a killing blow.
Nice.
So now, if you just eliminate all their endurance points, they'll be gone. But if you cause edge, that means that's when armor comes in and they have to make an armor roll versus this number.
Okay.
So in which case, they'll have an armor rating. This is simply a number of dice, much like any other roll. Maybe they've got 2 armor dice, so they're going to be rolling these dice, 2 plus the 12-sider, and they're going to be attempting to make 16. Wow. If they fail that, you've effectively given them a killing blow and they're dead.
Nice.
Now, as on the receiving end, same thing happens. You're going to be getting hit with endurance points, and again, bumps and scratches, and they will come back relatively quickly after the battle's over.
Sure.
But if I make edge, you're going to have to make an armor roll versus the edge of the weapon coming in.
Okay.
If you succeed, you're fine. You still take the endurance points, but you're not wounded. If you fail, that knife gets up under there, and you are wounded, and we mark off wounded.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to get too dive deeply into the mechanics too much, but know that combat tends to be desperate affairs.
Nice.
Like when combats end in this game, most of the players are sort of like, okay, we're done. Is everybody whole? Okay, all right, we did it. Right? It's fast and furious, and a fight that is going very well can turn for ill very, very, very quickly.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, that's what some of the chat has been saying too. Is combat in this is literally one of the scariest things in the game.
It's really scary. I remember in my home game, the first few adventures, you're fighting bandits or maybe the occasional forest goblin or something like that. I remember so distinctly the first time my players fought orcs. Mm-hmm. It was genuinely terrifying.
Okay.
It was genuinely terrifying. And there's a moment in one of the published adventures where I don't want to call it spoilers, but there's a moment where you see for the first time the symbol of a red lidless eye painted upon the armor of an orc. Now, the characters don't necessarily know what that means, but the players are all going, "Oh,
what?
Oh, that's bad." Because there's this. We all know the story, so we know what that means, and that's very bad news indeed. Right.
Okay. Very cool. All right, so I've got my great spear.
So you got a great. So you're gonna do giant spear, you think?
Oh yeah, the giant slayer.
So giant slaying spear. So it is an unusually long great spear made of ash wood and used.
Once
only used from horseback. So when attacking a creature that is greater than human size, so if you're fighting a troll, for example, the damage rating is raised by 4. Ooh. So you go from 9 to 13 as the damage rating.
Oh, so I just put a 13 there. And
yeah, so that's if you're fighting anything that's greater than human size, whether that be a cave troll or something more horrible, maybe a great spider or something.
I would fight a great spider.
Yeah, right?
I would.
I can't imagine you wouldn't.
Every day. Well, not every day. I got to rest.
Right. So, and then, so I have to select a virtue, and I think I'm going to do the elf magic because we had a question about magic earlier. I want to take the magic so I can sort of show exactly how something like that works. So we're going to do, for my virtue, I think it's simply called elf magic.
All right, while he's looking up elf magic, what I'd like for you guys to do that are watching, we need to have a name for my bjorning character, all right? So come up with a name. You can do a character generator. I know they have names in the book that are kind of like, these are typical
very
bjorning.
Tolkien themed. So
Right.
so bjornings are going to be a lot of Germanic sounding names or whatnot. So for those of you that know, of course, Tolkien was he was a linguist. So language is very important to him, which is why there are people in the really rural world that can speak Elvish, right? But of course, it's our game. We can do whatever we want. You can call him Giant Slayer if you want to, But
We're not going to do that.
But if you want to keep it a little more in keeping with the tone, you use sort of Germanic backgrounds or even Anglo-Saxon background.
So go ahead, if you guys have some cool ideas for some names, let's hear them, and we'll pick one of those and we'll name this character. Remember, he's a bjorning, or she, it could be a female, that is Cultural Blessing Furious, Calling Wanderer, has a specialty in Anduin and Folklore, and also storytelling. And he or she carries a great spear that is a giant slaying spear.
All right, and what we've decided for my elf is we're going to have Wood Elf Magic. Now, Wood Elf Magic actually has a couple different levels so that instead of... I can spend additional experience points later on to gain some other abilities used with Wood Elf Magic. But as my virtue, I've taken Wood Elf Magic, and the default ability associated with that is Stinging Arrow. So I can make my arrows flicker as if with a magical fire and make it fly true. So again, it's not a spell per se, but there are magical abilities that are going to invoke that tone and allow you to have magic in your setting without necessarily having a list of spells, right? So Stinging Arrow, that means I can spend a point of hope when I let loose an arrow, and it will fly up to twice its normal range, or I can spend a point of hope after a successful attack roll to produce an automatic piercing blow. That means I do not need to make that edge rating on my bow. I can spend the point of hope to automatically make it pierce, and they have to make an armor roll.
Wow.
So again, though, I have to spend hope to do that.
Right.
So there's this
so valuable.
There's this mechanical economy that's like, what's going on? And there's also just tonally, like how much of that am I willing to give up in order to save the day, as it were, or take down the big bad.
So we've been given Robert Baratheon.
Was that Travis?
That was Alan. That's a great
right.
name. Great name, Alan. How about we got Baum, take on German Baum for tree. That's a cool one, Baum.
That's not bad.
Neomund, Kelbon, The Big Show. Again, that's Alan. Alan's got the best one so far. Actually, I do like Baum. That's a cool name. Baum as a first name. And then maybe as we play, when I get the opportunity to actually play this character, maybe we get a cool last name.
So the other thing about bjornings, and they go into a bit about this in the text here, which is they frequently have descriptive names as things go on, right? Like you sort of end up with nicknames, right? So so my wife's character, her name is Kettleither, which if memory serves is old Germanic or Norse for kettle warden, I think, because cooking was one of her things, but. So her cooking trait was very much a part of her personality, and she's sort of the warm-hearted hope of the group. So she just goes by Kettle. She goes by Kettle, and then there was an instance where she helped render some sheep fat to defend a castle gatehouse. Okay. So of course using her cooking skill in a kettle, so Kettle sort of stuck. So they just call her Kettle.
Nice.
Right. So we're gonna go ahead and take one of these selections of Mirkwood Elf out of the book, since coming up with very Tolkien-y sounding elf names isn't necessarily something that somebody can do off the top of their head. So we're gonna go with Galdor.
Galdor, that's a good name.
Yeah, we're gonna go with Galdor.
So we took Baum for the bjorning. And Baum, I like that as a Germanic take on Baum for tree. I do like that. That's very cool. Thank you. Everybody else had some really good names up there too. We had Robert Baratheon, Eldred of Old Council. That's cool. Ildred of the Old Council.
Okay.
Then Erzherler, German for teller. Interesting. There's some good names, guys.
So believe it or not, we're pretty much done. So really all we have left to do is you pick your armor.
All right.
And then you record encumbrance. Now this is a game in which encumbrance actually means something. If you think about a lot of role-playing games, encumbrance tends to be this tedious thing that you have to do to make sure you don't have too much or whatever. But the way encumbrance works in this game is once you decide your gear, you add up the encumbrance ratings. That's your starting fatigue rating. Okay. And then as we travel, as we fail rolls, our fatigue rating goes up. And much like the relationship between shadow and hope, if your shadow gets higher than your hope, you become miserable. If your fatigue rating becomes higher than your current endurance rating, you become weary. And that's where the thing happens where 1s, 2s, and 3s on your dice don't count anymore.
Ooh, yeah.
So there's this interesting. So travel actually means something,
right?
And there's this beautiful, really elegant travel system for the game where, you really wrap some narrative around travel. Because traditionally, you think about in role-playing games, it's like, well, you're 3 weeks away from the city,
right? And
the game master says, okay, well, 3 weeks later,
right?
Or, well, I roll on some chart and you have to fight an owlbear or something, right? Sure. So instead of that, there's actually a whole system where maybe you're the hunter and I'm the guide. And depending on how the roles play out, certain things are going to happen to the different roles, depending on who's succeeding or failing at the roles. Nice. So yeah, travel is really, really compelling. And there's some special maps, one for the players. So part of the game is very much laying out a map on the table and charting your course. Whereas the lore master is going to have a special map that shows all of the various levels of corruption and whatnot.
Nice. So we're literally just down to.
We're pretty much that's pretty much it. You pick some armor and then we add up our endurance points and we're good to go.
Okay.
And that's really it.
I'm thinking that I want to just go with some banded mail or something along that line.
So really, we're sticking with sort of.
No, I don't want banded mail.
Well, there's no banded mail really.
A mail shirt.
So there's not really plate mail in Tolkien, right?
Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing people like to argue about on the internet. Like, does the Balrog have wings? Well, it depends on how you read the text, right?
Right.
So similarly, there's not a lot of evidence of things like plate mail and whatnot in the Middle Earth setting. It's very much chainmail, leather armor.
Okay.
That's about it.
Going
and
with
some great shields and whatnot.
Leather armor.
So leather shirt, leather corselet, and corselets, that's sort of like the long coat that comes down to mid-thigh. And then you can do mail shirt, coat of mail, or the mail hauberk.
Not taking that at all.
And again, I don't. Yeah, that's a lot of encumbrance.
I don't thinking leather shirt.
Leather shirt's probably. Well, you're a big fellow too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd probably do corselet. I think I'm gonna do corselet. I'm not nearly so tough as you are. And you're just gonna drop that down in the bottom there that says, yep, leather corselet. And you're gonna or whatever it is you got. You're
leather shirt.
You're gonna add the encumbrance rating,
which I believe is 4.
Yeah, what do I got there?
8.
I got 8. Oof. Right. And And then in your armor box, you're going to write the protection. So you have a leather shirt, so you have 1 die. So they just put 1d, 1 lowercase d.
All right.
So that means when you're making an armor roll, that's what you get.
Yikes.
1d.
Yeah,
right?
that's.
It's not
tough.
great.
No, and that's okay though, because like I said, I have a lot of body.
Sure.
Sure,
Well,
we'll
the
go
other thing, because your endurance is so high, you could also decide to wear heavier armor because
Right.
that means your fatigue could get higher because you've got a high endurance rating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going leather corselet. I want that extra die of protection.
All right. Oh, it does give you an extra.
It
die.
does give you an extra die, right? But you're a big guy. You can take the encumbrance. That's not a thing.
Which means I can just take what I could. You're saying based on that, I can take a higher rated shirt.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I will take the male shirt then. That looks good. Male shirt gives me a 12 here, and instead gives me 3D.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, 3 dice. So that's it. Like really, we just add up. We add up the encumbrance of our weapons. Now, if you want to take a dagger as well, that's negligible.
Sure.
Negligible encumbrance. But basically, we're looking at 12 and 4. So your fatigue is going to be 16.
Right.
So and that's your starting fatigue score. So as you travel, that score will go up.
Mm-hmm.
As you get beat up a little bit, your endurance will come down, and you don't want those things across because that's when you become weary.
Okay.
But again, if you get wounded, you can ignore being weary
I can.
because you're furious.
And let's get wounded.
Right.
No.
Yeah, let's get wounded.
No.
No. Let's not get wounded.
Right, so that's basically it.
That's basically it. We're gonna do one more thing for giggles.
Yes, for giggles.
Because in this new supplement, in Adventurer's Companion, there's some really fun stuff at the end that is just for fun and for color. What has it's got in its pockets is, eh? That is actually this thing. There are no mechanical rules associated with this, but it's just a little bit of flavor. We're gonna roll some dice. So
Okay.
we're gonna give you one little bit of character something out of this new supplement.
All
So
right.
go ahead and roll that.
All right. A
You've got a
1.
1. All right. So that is a shiny something or other.
A shining something.
Now hang on. Now we're gonna roll 2. Roll the 6-sided twice more in succession. Right. So we've got a 5
and a
1. You have a shiny glass ring.
Ooh.
Right? And you can just plug that in anywhere, right?
All right.
Like maybe in background you have a shiny glass ring. Then we're gonna keep rolling the 6-sided.
Okay.
Shiny glass ring. That from, and then one more die.
From.
Yep. And then one more die.
3.
From Gondor.
Ooh, nice.
So I don't know what that means, but now you've got this fun little character hook. Why do you have a shiny glass ring from Gondor? I don't know. But now you've got a wacky thing in your pocket. Let's see. We're gonna do something for Galdor here as well. I have a curious wooden bead. A curious wooden bead from home.
Interesting.
That's what I've got.
It's curiouser and curiouser.
Yep, a curious wooden bead from home. One of my favorite little bits of nonsense from the new Adventurer's Companion.
That is awesome.
It's such a fun little thing to give us some character. Curious wooden bead from home.
I like it. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Paul,
right.
very much for showing off all the character build stuff here.
Sure.
Thank you guys for watching. We got one more thing we're going to show you guys. If the One Ring is a mechanic that you guys aren't really into, and that's okay, Cubicle 7 also did this.
We've also done Adventures of Middle-earth. Now this is for 5e, which is to say it's for the 5th edition of that game about big reptilian creatures in underground catacombs.
Yeah.
So we've taken all of the stuff that we've done producing the One Ring over the years, and we've converted that to a more traditional role-playing experience and rule set for the current 5th edition rules. So Player's Guide is out now. You can use this with all of your 5th edition stuff and be out and running and good to go. And the Lore Master's Guide, while not required, gives you a lot more options as the Lore Master, and that'll be out by the end of April, we're hoping.
Okay.
So kind of like 2 flavors of the same thing, right? So
thing.
One Ring, I'm a Tolkien purist, and I really like the narrative style.
Sure.
But if 5th edition is more your speed, we've taken a lot of the Tolkien stuff that we learned over the years and we've applied it to this. And all of these books are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're beautiful art, beautiful. And when you get a new book, you always take a whiff and it smells amazing. I do have a question about this.
Yeah.
The travel component
Yes.
in here, is that?
It is. It is slightly different.
Okay.
But yes, there are. You do use maps.
Okay.
But it's maybe just a half a tick less narrative, but there's
Okay.
still it's still there. It's still not just rolling this wandering monster chart.
Perfect.
There's very much like you have to prepare for the journey. You have to decide who is doing what on the journey. How well things are going to go once you set out. How well things go. As you arrive.
Okay.
So there is a modified version of the journey system in there.
Nice.
And similarly, alignment goes away. And
Right.
instead, we provide a corruption system and things like that.
Nice.
So it's a nice port. This will feel very familiar while still feeling like Tolkien.
Absolutely. That's very cool. Well, again, thank you, Paul. I appreciate
course.
your time. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming
Thanks
in.
for having me
It's a lot of fun. We're probably not going to see the last of Paul here at Game Trade Media. So, guys, stay tuned for some upcoming cool stuff coming out the gate here real soon. Again, we appreciate everybody joining in. Please share this on your own social media and in groups that you think might enjoy this.
I feel obligated to go write a lengthy background for Galdor.
I feel the same way.
All right.
And I think I'm going to do that, and I'll post it up on Game Trade Media.
Awesome.
So you guys can read it. And we'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Painting Happy Little Minis. I've been your host here at Game Trade Media. I'm Big Rick. Again, thank you, Paul.
Sure.
And we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Cool. Thanks, guys.